Hi, and welcome to Psychology 1, and this topic for this week is emotions, which is the second part of motivation and emotions. Emotions can color our lives. We are green with envy, red with anger, blue with sorrow. Positive emotions such as love and desire can fill our day with pleasure. Negative emotions such as fear, depression, and anger can fill us with dread and make each day a chore. Just what are emotions? If you ask people to define emotion, you'll get a variety of answers. Most people will probably say that emotions are feelings. Some people will give examples such as happiness, sadness, or anger, but a few will be able to produce a good definition of what emotion actually is. Even psychologists have trouble defining what is meant by an emotion. So let's begin our investigation as to what is an emotion. Motivation is fueled by our emotional state. Emotions prepare and motivate us to respond adaptively to a variety of situations. For example, when you see someone who is sad, we may be motivated to help them. Fear motivates us to either flee or escape danger or to engage in a protective behavior. Emotions make it more likely that others will respond to us and vice versa. So emotions. Emotions are feeling states with physiological, so your body feelings, cognitive, our thinking, and behavioral components. Arousal of the autonomic nervous system. So physiological arousal, that's one step, the first step, allows us to feel the intensity of emotions. You'll feel the blood pressure rise, your temperature in your body, drier mouthfeel, a number of things. 2, the cognitive appraisal of a situation arousing the emotion. So the way we perceive or interpret the stimulus or situation determines specific emotions that we feel. Not all of us respond to the same stimuli with the same emotion, and that's a lot to do with our own cognitive, that is, how we think about it. And then the third, behavioral component, an outward expression of the emotion. That could be in our facial expressions, gestures, body postures, tone of voice stem from and convey our emotions. If we look at our body's autonomic versus autonomic system, the ANS, it consists of two divisions, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Let's look at those more closely. The sympathetic nervous system, it is responsible for things like our heartbeat, rapid heartbeat, breathing, sweating, muscle tension. Behavioral tendencies occur with emotion. Example, fear leads to avoidance or escape, and anger may lead to payback behaviors. Physiological, that's the physiological component, that is. Then the parasympathetic nervous system arousal also occurs. The example of this was depression usually involves cognitions of helplessness and hopelessness, the parasympathetic arousal, and tendencies towards inactivity, the cognitive appraisal. Our behavior is the result of physiological and cognitive experiences. So the expression of emotions, the expression of many emotions may be universal. There are certain facial expressions suggest the same emotion in all people. Smiling is a universal sign of friendliness and approval. There isn't a one-to-one relationship between facial expression and the emotion. Although there is much agreement across cultures, that being said, there is recognized what are known as universal emotions. There's a caveat, and it's that there are cultural variations. Display rules, how they may differ from one culture to the next. Now, display rules are cultural rules that dictate how emotions should be expressed, where they should be expressed, when their expression is appropriate. Display rules dictate what emotions are appropriate to express in different social situations. So, for example, although we may not like a gift, we display emotions consistent with happiness in order to protect the feelings of the gift giver. Different cultures have different display rules. So, for example, in Japanese culture, it's not appropriate to display negative emotions in public. Display rules are learned early, and we follow them throughout, though we may not always be aware of them. Positive psychology, we'll touch on there for a moment here. Positive psychology deals with the positive emotions, such as happiness and love, factors contributing to happiness. Well, there's a genetic component that's argued. Happiness seems to run in families, in the same way that obesity can also. So there are some genetic components for some of the things that affect our lives. There may be a genetic explanation. One could also suggest that children raised in happy families will learn happy things. Therefore, positive events can play a significant role in our lives. Knowing that you are loved, recognition at work. Now, these two elements, these are basic psychological needs we all need satisfied in order to experience more positive life experiences. Happiness. Other factors that contribute to happiness. Money does not make people happy, but when we have enough money, at least we don't have to worry about money. People who are married are happier. People who have the social supports around them are happier. More educated people tend to be happier. Happy people are more open to new experiences and are more willing to risk. Religious people are happier. Feelings connected with to important things outside of self contribute to happiness. Happiness tends to be accompanied by optimism, and there's a belief in the ability to affect change that leads to happiness, that we see that our lives are within our control. Therefore, if I effect control of my life to be happy, I can be happy. As you would expect, negative events can affect our happiness and may even depress us. Loss of a loved one, financial reverses, injury can all affect our level of happiness. There's a hypothesis that's called the facial feedback hypothesis. Now, this hypothesis argues that facial expressions can also affect our emotional state, that the muscular movement involved in certain facial expression can trigger the corresponding emotion. Example, smiling makes us happy. Inducing people to smile leads them to report more positive feelings when in fact we're asked them to frown, the subjects rate cartoons as more aggressive. You'll find on page 230 in your text a try it element. Give it a go. It's about using a pencil in your mouth. Try it out and see what your experience is. So now let's look at some theories of emotions. And now there's various perspectives. And some psychologists believe that the body takes precedence over the mind. Cognitive processes may determine the emotional response. The common sense theory is that something happens, a situation, that is cognitively appraised or interpreted by the person and the feeling state, a combination of arousal and thoughts, is what ends up following this combination. Then, this thought and physiological combine to make an emotion. Now, if we look at three more theories, we're going to check, and if you check in figure 9.4, I think it is in your textbook, theories of emotion. It's on page 232 for a summary of the ones that we're just going to explore here. And we're going to start with James Lange theory. James Lange theory, our emotions follow rather than cause our behavioral response to an event. We become angry because we are actively acting more aggressively. We may be able to change our feelings by changing our behavior. The theory supports the facial feedback hypothesis that a smile, which is behavioral, can induce more positive and pleasant feelings. This theory also opened the door to consider if behavior can affect emotional feelings, could doing the opposite change the feeling? The second theory we'll touch on is the Cannon-Bard theory. They suggested an event might simultaneously trigger bodily responses and the experience of an emotion. Emotions accompany bodily responses not produced by body changes. Then there's a theory of cognitive appraisal by Schlatter and Singer. The label we give to an emotion depends on our cognitive appraisal, the way we think about the situation. The theory states that for an emotion to occur, one, there must be a physiological arousal, and two, the person must perceive some reason for the arousal in order to label the emotion. Happiness and anger are different emotions. Schlatter and Singer suggest that the physiological differences between the two is pretty small. So the different view of the situation, the label that people put on the event, is what's most important. So our cognitive appraisal becomes very critical. We both can see a situation that could be stress-inducing, but someone else might run toward it, and someone might flee. Consider a fireman. You're walking down the street, and this huge fire is going, and you're near it. You might, as a response, run away. But the firemen, they run toward. And so that stressful environment brings two different results based on how people think about it. Okay? So what we can carry on with on this is it this arousal and emotional connection that has influenced the development of lie detection methods? So let's look at detecting or detectors. Do detectors detect? So we'll touch on the lying. Surveys by the New York Times found that 3 out of 5 people believe that it is sometimes necessary to lie, especially to protect people's feelings. Canadian research even suggests, that toddlers who lie will do better in life, as lying at an early age is a marker for later intelligence. Amazing. But that tells us that there's some cognitive processing to determine when is lying advantageous and when is it not. Body reactions to lying. Well, our facial expressions are often clues to deceit. They're called microtells. Poker players search for microtells in people's faces. The sympathetic arousal symptoms include dry mouth, the lack of saliva. Lie detector tests, polygraphs, often will monitor sympathetic arousal. Some of the things that polygraphs will measure will be heart rate, blood pressure, respiration rate, and electrodermal response, or sweating. Things that we typically can't control. We can control respiration and maybe heart rate, but blood pressure not so much. The American Polygraph Association claims that polygraphs are 85 to 90% accurate. But factors that influence accuracy are tense muscles, drugs, and previous experience to do the test. People can train to do those tests well and pass them. So evaluation. Well, research by psychologists' opinion of accuracy indicate that most think that it's not theoretically sound and should not be used in the court of law. That's the polygraph and eyewitness accounts. Stronger emotions are connected with higher levels of arousal. Different structures of the brain are involved with different emotions. The lack of control over emotions tends to be felt as a disturbing experience, and we like to be in control of our bodies, in control of our emotions, act our way into a new way of thinking, or can we think our way into a new way of behaving? Interesting perspective. And maybe with our emotions, that psychologists really don't have a good handle on the expression and the importance of them. Keep in mind, physiological, behavioral, and cognitive, that those 3 elements contribute to how we emote, and the connection between emotions supporting motivations and motivations supporting emotions. A quick overview again. I hope this is going well for you. Work hard, focus, study hard. Study well. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Good luck, everybody.